Welcome to Let's Build a Willys Jeep. Today's video I'm going to show you how to install your fuel lines into your L134 Go Devil engine. The fuel lines run directly from our fuel tank, which is located right on top of our driver's seat. The fuel tank is located right here. There'll be a fuel line directly threaded into the bottom of our fuel tank. The fuel line will run this way underneath our tub and come up into our engine compartment. The fuel line is located down here. It'll run through our tub and then run up our fender. There'll be a connection right here which we'll attach our inline fuel filter to. This fuel filter will then be connected to here, then run down to our fuel pump. And there'll be another line connected from our fuel pump, be a line connected right there, and run up to our carburetor. And now we will install all these different components to get our fuel lines in operation. The first step is installing our long fuel line that will attach directly to our fuel tank and then run all the way to our fuel pump located on the engine block. This fuel line will run all the way along the underneath of your tub. The fuel line runs underneath the tub and then connects to that little hook that's welded to the tub, and then the fuel line continues to go that direction. And then from our hook, it'll go this way, and then it will go up through the tub. The long fuel line coming from a fuel tank will run up through the tub, up this way, and then along the driver's side fender, and then it'll get to this end where we will now connect our inline filter towards our fuel pump. Once you have fully installed your long fuel line on the underbody of your tub, we can now thread our fuel line into our fuel tank. This right here, we will just add thread sealant to the threads, and then we'll just hand tighten our threads into our fuel tank, and that will make a nice seal. Now I'm going to go over all the different fuel lines that will be installed in our engine compartment. First, we have this long fuel line. This fuel line will be connected directly to our fuel pump and then run up to our carburetor using this long line. And then we'll also have an inline fuel filter. This fuel filter will be installed to our long fuel line and then connect directly to our fuel pump. There'll be multiple different connections here to integrate a inline fuel filter to this system, and now we will get everything installed. I have already pre-installed some adapters on our Solux carburetor and the fuel pump. So on the carburetor, install a brass fitting that fits your stock fitting from your Solux carburetor when you originally buy it, and then we'll build up to a 90-degree angle. So that will thread into our existing fuel line that connects our carburetor to our fuel pump. And then our fuel pump, if you go down here and look, there is 90-degree angles on both sides. Make sure you install these 90 degrees before you install your fuel pump into your engine block, because you won't be able to spin these two on. The first fuel line to be installed is our longer fuel line coming from our fuel pump that will be attached to our carburetor. First, we're going to put on the tread sealant on both ends before we tighten this on to each end. The fuel line between your fuel pump and the carburetor will be installed this direction with the bend right here facing towards the upward direction. And now we will just install it in its location, and we will thread on the top first. With the top loosely tightened, we will now move on to the bottom where the fuel pump is, and we will just loosely put this on as well, threading it in. Now tighten both ends of your fuel line with the wrench and get them snug, and that will be good. Once you get the fuel line installed between your fuel pump and your carburetor and it's all tightened up, now we can finalize and tighten up our long fuel line and get in the right position. So we'll have to install a bracket, drill a hole through the fender to secure. And you want to secure your long fuel line so it does not hit your other fuel line, and it's a direct shot from this end right to the other end on your fuel pump. Now going over the various connections for our inline fuel filter that will be installed between our long fuel line coming from our fuel tank directly to our fuel pump. First, we have this connection right here. So I cut off the factory end, put on one of these types of connections. We have a 1/4-inch thread, and then from that we can put on a 1/4-inch 90 to a female, and then we'll have a male 1/4 inch to a 1/4 inch barb that will thread in like that, and that will be this end, while the other end, we will have this right here. So we will have a adapter that goes from our 90 down there, or that adapts from this thread on your other fuel line to a 1/4 inch. And then this will be your 1/4 inch long, 2.5 inch extension. And then that will thread into your 90 1/4 inch female. And then from this, you have your male 1/4 inch thread on your barb. And then we'll stick this on this way. And this will connect to our inline fuel filter with our 2 rubber hoses on each side. So we can always change this out when this gets all clogged up. So this right here will actually look like this in the end. We'll have 1 adapter, 2 adapters, 3 adapters, 4 adapters that will connect to our inline fuel filter. And then this side will just have 2 adapters, which will install directly into this side of our fuel filter. And that is how we get our fuel filter installed into our fuel system. Now we can get the connections all assembled before we install it to our fuel pump first. First, we're going to have to install our long extension to our adapter that goes to a fuel pump. We'll put some tread sealant on this side. Thread our adapter into our 2.5 inch long extension. Now we can move on to the other end of our extension. We'll put thread sealant on this side as well. Now we can install our 90-degree female onto our extension, just putting it on. Use 2 wrenches to tighten up the connections on your 2.5 inch extension. Now put thread sealant on your 1/4 inch barb to attach to our extension. Now install your barb onto your 90-degree female end on your extension, just threading it on. Now use a wrench to hold down your 90 while we tighten down our barb. Now put some tread sealant on the adapter that we'll use to attach to our fuel pump. Now it is time to put our extension onto our fuel pump 90 on the left side. We'll just thread it on. Now use a wrench and align your barb with the other fuel line so we have a straight shot connection between both. Now it is time to install the connections on the long fuel line at the very top. So first we have to put thread sealant on our 90. Now install your 90 to the fitting on your long fuel line, just threading it in. Use 2 wrenches to tighten up your 90 to your long fuel line. Now put thread sealant on your 1/4 inch barb. Now thread in your 1/4 barb into your 1/4 90. Using 2 wrenches, tighten your barb to your 90. Now with all the connections fully built and sealed, the extension on our fuel pump is installed with the barb so we can attach our inline fuel filter to here. And then also our top connection is installed to our fuel line that goes directly to our fuel tank. And this barb is installed so we can attach our inline fuel filter, and the filter will go right here. And now we have to get our barbs in line with each other so we have a direct shot or straight line between this barb and that barb so we can install our hoses and our inline fuel filter. Looking from the top, you can see that the barbs are slightly off, so we'll have to adjust this one and this one until they make a perfect straight line. Make the adjustments so the barbs are in line, and now we can measure from the end of this barb to the end of this barb with a measuring tape to see how long we have to cut our fuel lines to fit on our inline fuel filter. Using a measuring tape, measure from the bottom of the barb at the bottom connection and then to the top of the connection where the barb is. You get 7 3/4 inch. So now we know we have to make this total length of our inline fuel filter 7 3/4 inch. Using some basic math, we can now figure out how long we need to cut our rubber fuel lines to make sure that our inline fuel filter is perfectly centered. So we measure our fuel filter 2.5 inches. So that means we have to cut each of these hoses to 2 5/8 inch. So 2 5/8 plus 2.5 plus another 2 5/8 equals 7 3/4 total length. And now this length is perfectly will fit in between our fuel lines. Once you get your fuel lines cut to 2 5/8, put on your clamp to hold your fuel line onto your inline fuel filter. You might have to heat up your fuel line because it might be pretty stiff, so give it a quick heat with a heat gun. That'll make it more malleable, and then we can just push it on. And now we will install this into our fuel line system. First, you want to make sure your arrow is pointing in the right direction, so make sure the arrow is pointing in the direction the fuel would flow. And now we will install our upper portion on the barb, just pushing it on as so. Now put on the bottom rubber hose for your fuel line onto the barb, just pushing it on, and it'll just slide on as so. And this is what it will look like when it's fully installed. So it'll be a nice straight line with your inline fuel filter to both of your connections. And now we have to just install our clamps on the barbs on the top and the bottom. Install hose clamps on the top and the bottom of each of the barbs, so that will secure our fuel filter to both of our connections. And now we can just hand tighten the clamps until they're hand tight, and that will make everything secure. And that is how we install our inline fuel filter into our fuel line connections. The fuel line comes from your fuel tank, runs this way, attaches to your fender, and then it goes to an inline fuel filter which connects to your fuel pump. Then from your fuel pump, there's a line that goes up and connects to your carburetor. And that is how you get all your fuel lines properly installed and sealed. Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe.